While Boom Supersonic looks to commercialize the skies, President Trump is aiming to defend them. Trump signing an executive order yesterday to develop an American-made Iron Dome missile shield for the U.S. The president commended Israel's Iron Dome, calling its missile intercept technology absolutely phenomenal. But building one like it in America, for America, could come with unique challenges. The United States spans 3.8 million square miles, dwarfing Israel's 8,400 square mile area. So that would be a tall order. Despite that, the president called for, quote, immediate work to be done on the project and that it must be made right here in the USA. It's something defense technology company Anduril is already working on planning, at least when it comes to helping with our defense. The autonomous systems and weapons manufacturing leader is building Arsenal One, its first hyperscale manufacturing facility in Columbus, Ohio, that's going to span 5 million square feet, set to produce tens of thousands of military systems annually. Anduril founder and billionaire entrepreneur Palmer Luckey, also the guy who created the Oculus VR headset and then sold it for billions of dollars to Meta, joins us now in a Fox Business exclusive. But Palmer, I got to ask you first, because you are a tech entrepreneur, you're a gutsy guy. What do you think of this DeepSeek Chinese chatbot, and do you believe that it's somehow the holy grail now and that everything else made in the USA when it comes to AI chatbots should be tossed by the wayside?
Well, it's been pretty interesting getting to comment on AI stuff so frequently lately. You know, Anduril started as an AI company almost 8 years ago. The acronym of our company, Anduril Industries, is AI. And when we started Anduril, AI was kind of a dirty word. It was always 5 years in the future, never here. Right. And obviously now we're in a race against China to develop artificial intelligence that's going to define a lot of our future economy. Now, with DeepSeek specifically, I don't really buy into a lot of it. You get a lot of media right now about how they spent just $5 million to train this model that is competitive or beating a lot of U.S. options.
Yeah,
first of all, isn't true. They're not covering a lot of the costs. That's not the cost of both of the models that they developed. And I think the problem is they put out that number specifically to harm U.S. companies. You had a lot of useful idiots in U.S. media kind of just mindlessly reporting that that's the case. And neither China nor the media nor DeepSeek has any kind of incentive to correct the record, as a lot of U.S. companies like NVIDIA crash to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars. So look, it's a really impressive step. They've definitely made some technological innovations, but I don't think that people should take what they're saying at face value. And they should realize that there are a lot of people cheering for the United States to fail. There's people who are clearly cheering for our tech companies to fail, and obviously President Trump to fail. It's a shame that so many of them are in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, we said at the top of the show yesterday, what is this tech wreck? You're going to believe this? Okay, we don't know anything about the cost assumptions, about the architecture or the algorithms.
Yeah. And it's not even that they're lying. Like, you got to realize that the 5 million number that's out there is for one version of the model. The other more advanced version, they haven't put out any information on what it costs to train. But you have a lot of people jumping onto that 5 million number, reporting it as if that is relevant to the whole thing, ignoring a lot of the infrastructure costs, the R&D costs. There's a reason they put out the news that way. And if the stock market is any indication, it's accomplishing exactly what they hope to. So, look, we can recognize that Chinese AI is a real competitive threat without losing our minds over it and falling for CCP propaganda.
Let me talk about propaganda when it comes to Russia. Today, Vladimir Putin came out, the president of Russia, and said, we are going to be one of the world's leaders in drone manufacturing by 2030. He's obviously been stung by what Ukraine has been able to do. You are at the heart of drone manufacturing, whether it's by land or sea or air. Give me a sense of what is going to happen at this Columbus, Ohio plant and how you guys are the leaders here.
Well, the Columbus, Ohio plant is really the realization of things that we've been working on for many years. You know, our very first pitch deck that we gave to investors 8 years ago included a specific quote from Vladimir Putin, where he was speaking at a technical college. And he said, translated from Russian, the country that wins in the sphere of artificial intelligence will become the ruler of the entire world. And so this is not Putin looking at asymmetrical technologies like AI or drones and just now realizing that it's important for his own country. He's been really ahead of the curve. He was ahead of this back when a lot of people, even in the tech industry, thought that it was a waste of time and that it was certainly not going to be the future of defense on this kind of timeline. Putin's a pretty sharp guy in this area, and he understands that mass scale manufacturing of these types of systems is important. Our Columbus facility is really about hyperscaling manufacturing of exactly that type of system, low cost, high-powered AI systems that are going to be able to deter wars around the world and, if necessary, win them swiftly.
I see. So it's the carry a big stick theory, but, you're going to be making these. How quickly can you ramp up before we go, Palmer? Because right now it's been said that if we had to be in a war with, say, for example, China, we'd run out of munitions in 8 days.
It's a huge problem in the United States is that we just do not have enough weapons. We don't have enough missiles. We don't have enough aircraft. We don't have enough submarines, and we have not set ourselves on a path to solve those problems. I think President Trump has really made this a priority to get back to reindustrialization of our defense industrial base, to get to higher scale manufacturing that can deter China with a strength through power, a peace through strength posture. We're going to be fully operational at Arsenal 1, our new factory, in 2026. We're going to be having a bunch of aircraft coming off the line at full rate production.
Can we be there? I want to come, Palmer. I really do. I want to cover that.
Absolutely. Come on by. It's going to be great.
Thank you. I'll wear a hairnet or whatever you need me to do in a factory. Good to see you. Thank you so much.